The typical layperson or novice evolutionist has a very poor understanding of geology. This is because the information presented to us in secular education institutions regarding geology is largely false, because it is mostly false assumptions which are based upon the denial of the fact that the Earth has been globally flooded. Evolutionists must deny the fact that the Earth has been globally flooded, because the fact that it has been discredits evolutionism all by itself. Another reason that the typical evolutionist has such a poor understanding of geology is because they are in such a state of denial because of where their heart is, that they do not allow their mind to accept what they learn from creationists regarding geology. Commonly, instead of being astonished by the information they are provided by creationists regarding geology, which overturns much of what they've learned in school, they become incensed by it and resort to ad hominem attacks, such as calling the creationist an idiot or a science denialist, which actually describes the evolutionist best. If all else fails, they attempt to slander the creationist. Once they calm down, they will inevitably revert to the typical fingers in the ears, la la la, I don't hear what you say, it can't be true syndrome of evolutionists. They must do this because, for them, the flood of Noah simply cannot be true. Because, as stated, if the flood of Noah were true, and it is, it discredits evolutionism all by itself. Therefore, the evolutionist must, at all costs, deny the flood of Noah and all geologic evidence that supports it, which is almost everything in geology, cannot be true, regardless of how much or how empirical that evidence may be. The typical layperson evolutionist fails to understand the difference between layers and strata. Layers are vertical associations of sedimentary material. Strata are horizontal associations of sedimentary material. Both are a part of the same geologic process, and they are created together at the same time, contrary to what the evolutionists claim, and have claimed for so long. They commonly believe that the layers of the Earth are without strata, that they were all laid down horizontally over vast amounts of time, sometimes as little as a few 10,000s of years, but most often hundreds of thousands or even many millions of years. Secular geologists understand well the difference between layers and strata. Even so, they claim that the layers and strata were laid down over vast amounts of time. Like so much evidence in science that discredits evolution and demonstrates the Earth has been globally flooded, secular geologists have known for quite some time that layers and strata are created together and do not require vast amounts of time. But because they are dedicated to the dogma of evolutionism, this knowledge is filtered, and like so much other knowledge that discredits evolutionism or verifies the flood, it never reaches the textbooks of high school and college students. The layers were not laid down over vast amounts of time. Geology proves to us that it is actually impossible for this to have happened. To better understand the processes of layering and stratification, let's watch a little video of some Dutch hydrologists which demonstrate this with large-scale experimentation in the laboratory setting.
This typical delta gradually progresses in the downstream direction A close look at the top-set slope in slow motion clearly shows a laminated deposit of finer particles. The thickness of the top-set deposit decreases in the downstream direction as the foreset slope of the delta is approached.
Over a long period of time, the accumulation of sediment displays clear stratification, with fine particles on top, coarse particles in the middle, and fine particles on the bottom. It is important to understand that the chronology of the formation of the deposits depends on the layers and not on the strata.
Isochrones correspond to the interface between successive layers, not strata. The thickness of strata is determined by the changes in sediment transport that occur in non-uniform flow.
Let's now consider two particles in the delta. Particle A in the upper strata and particle B in the lower strata. Particle A deposited at a time T1 before particle B. Particle B in the lower strata therefore deposited after particle A in the upper strata.
Increasing the flow depth while keeping the discharge and the supply of sediment unchanged results in more complex sedimentary features. Substantial deposits accumulate with features including deltas, dunes and ripples at various stages of development. A dried delta, viewed from the flume sidewalls, displays clear stratification characteristics in terms of superposition of deposits with similar particle size distribution. A cross-section is cut through the delta to examine the primary features of deposits of sediment mixtures carried out under steady flow and a continuous sediment supply. The cross-section displays a clear superposition of strata of fine particles in white and coarse particles in black with clear lamination. Looking at the cross-section of superposed strata, it is tempting to conclude that the strata correspond to successive sedimentary layers, that they result from discontinuous sedimentary periods, that each strata is younger than the one underneath it and older than the one above it, and that all points of the same strata have the same age.
This stratification experiment invalidates these hypotheses because these strata are not identical to successive layers. Moreover, clear stratification is observed under a continuous supply of heterogeneous sand particles.
Looking through the transparent sides of a large tank or flume, he studied the particles of sediment in the moving water. He observed that when the speed of the current was reduced, only the large particles of sediment were deposited. When the current was increased, microstrata started to form. So the grading of particles in strata was not just the result of layers of sediment piling up on top of each other, as had always been thought. The grading could simply be due to variations in the speed of the current when the particles were deposited. When the sea level drops and the damp sediments are exposed to the air, breaks occur between some of the strata as part of the drying out process. So these joints or breaks have nothing to do with time. These experiments, performed by a team of experts over many months under the most rigorous laboratory conditions, have been filmed and are available for all to see. They confirm the most important fact ever discovered in the history of sedimentology. Strata provide no indication of age. Ghiberto has shown that the strata you see in these banks are caused by changes in water currents. They don't just deposit themselves one upon the other over vast periods of time. They form sideways in a crab-like fashion, just like the banks.